21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
I spent my whole life training to become a diplomat. I have a Doctor of Law. I have 2 degrees in political science. I went to name brand schools. And when I was working on my PhD at Yale, I got sick and wasn't able to continue the study. And the kind of illness I got made it so that I could never get a security clearance. And without a security clearance, you cannot work in diplomacy. It's just, the two are mutually exclusive. So I had to find something else to do. And what I did was go to Antwerp with a buddy to smoke cigars and have Belgian beer in February. And there was we went into a cigar shop, and it was so cold. The wind's blowing off the North Sea, and it's probably only -2, but with the wind and the humidity, it felt so very cold. And we bought these lovely cigars, and we were going to settle in for the cigars. And the shop owner told me that the store was closing and we had to leave. And I just said, where am I going to smoke this? I spent 40 euros or whatever it was on this cigar, and I can't sit outside. And she said, just a minute. And she went upstairs, and it turns out there was a men's club, of a social club that met in the upstairs, and it was full of all of these Flemish men, and it was very formal. They introduced us in for the evening, and we spent the whole evening there drinking rum with the guys. It was fun, but one of the men was a diamond dealer, and he, like me, is not Jewish, and he, like me, started somewhere else, but he was at his retirement. None of his children were interested in his business at all. And we started chatting. And at the end of the night, he said, do you think you would be interested in diamonds? And I said, maybe. And he said, come to my office tomorrow morning at 10. And I did. And so that's how I got from working on my doctorate at Yale to trading diamonds on the floor of the Antwerp Diamond Exchange in a short space. It's not a natural story, but it's proof that anything can happen to anyone if you keep your mind open for it. I myself have a pretty substantial background in psychology, probably for a different reason than you do, but I realized that so I started trading diamonds. I realized that it's a very clubby thing, and it operates around faith. And the Jewish traders trade with the Jewish traders, the Hindu traders trade with the Hindu traders. And I'm a Protestant Christian, and with a lot of advanced degrees. So I don't naturally fit in the mold of fine jewelry, but I am smart enough to get myself through a lot of doors. And I also know, I kind of think of myself as, when we were kids, my mom would always invite these other kids around that I didn't necessarily like, but if they came enough times, they became friends. And I just started showing up. And in 10 years, I've darkened enough doorways in the jewelry world that people recognize me and recognize my skill. And what my special skill is I take very high-end clients. The jewelry I make is very expensive, and most of it isn't available to be seen because my clients are very private people and don't necessarily want people to know what I'm making for them. But I get to know them very well. And with my experience in diplomacy and with my experience in my own growing up, there's not anyone in the world I'm afraid to talk to. And I have met some very interesting and powerful people, and I have heard very personal stories out of them that I would never share, that I am able to commemorate in jewelry. And the podcast that I've made is a bit of an introduction into that process. And I have interviewed 10 people who are interesting folks. I interview them, and at the end of each interview, I design a piece of jewelry around the interview that I've had with them. And it's really a window into anthropology, psychology, and also the creative process of ornamentation, of jewelry, of all of that. And so that's sort of the special business capsule I've built. I grew up in a good and very wealthy family. And, for me to go from where I started with my family, where I live in San Juan in Puerto Rico, and there's a corner bar. I bought and have rebuilt a 300-year-old house, and I get to live there, and I love it. The On the corner is a cigar bar where it's also across the street from the governor's house, and a lot of important people hang out there, and I go there most evenings just for a drink. I met a man who was investing money from somebody in Denver who I knew. And I had never met this man before, and he knew the name of my sister. So that's the kind of family I grew up in. And for me to live in San Juan today, making fine jewelry is different than how I grew up. But my approach to jewelry is quite a bit different than the Cartier experience, where you start out with rings on a tray. But the reason I brought up the chocolate guy is because he mentioned, he invested in all of this equipment. He's making 7 pieces of chocolate a second and all of that, and he hated it. And if I was making, 55 diamond rings a day in my shop, I would hate it. I need about 2 clients at a time to be successful. And so my clients come from, they're people, I charge them by the hour. I don't charge, I charge for materials, and then my design time comes in at a pretty high price. And so it's a very different way of approaching jewelry. For some reason, I was not wired with the ability to quit. I don't know why. For some reason, I can't quit. And there are so many things in my life that I'd probably be better off if I stopped, if I just quit and did something different. I had a terrible marriage for a long time, just all this kind of stuff. And I think really the mindset of grit, the inability to quit is so important. If you look at people who become very successful, there's the old line, it takes a long time to become an overnight success, of course. But also, very many of the people who changed the world didn't do so until they were in their 50s. Even, and so that's in our spot, right? And there is a Roman Catholic theologian called Richard Rohr who talks about the process of life. And he says the first half of your life you spend building the vessel, and the second half of your life you spend filling it. And I am at the point where my swimming pool is built and designed, and now I need to start putting water in it. And there is a shift in mentality, and there are lots of people who are younger that can produce a lot of stuff, right? And make money young and do all of this stuff. But there's more to it than just making a widget, and there's more to it than just making money. You've actually got to start thinking about the legacy, thinking about the world you're leaving behind, and thinking about you yourself. And this concept that you brought up, in order to live, you must die, I think is so very important, because there's a part of our ego that we have to extinguish in order to truly live. And it is, you replace that with something productive. If you're a faithful person, you replace it with a religious walk. If you are a community-focused person, you replace it with a piece of a community that you want to design. But it can't just be about making a widget and making money on it. Because if that's all you're doing, you're just a machine. And I'm not a machine. I want to be a human. And being a human means, at least for me in my jewelry, I have to sit down with another human, and I have to find the space that the two of us touch each other, and I have to listen to them more than I talk. And I have learned that taking the cotton from my ears and putting it in my mouth is a critical skill in business. Very often, leadership is not given by command, it's given by example. And you can really only lead people if you know where they want to go. Because if you don't know where they want to go, they won't follow you there. And that's a critical insight that a lot of business leaders who lead by brute force very often get to the top of the mountain and realize their staff is on a completely different mountain. And those businesses fail. And I have learned, sometimes the easy way, sometimes the hard way, that even if I'm in charge and even if I'm leading, if my staff doesn't want to go down that road, then I don't either, unless I'm willing to go there by myself. In terms of running a jewelry company, my management style is definitely directive. I have a concept, I make the designs, and I write my designs in words. One of my brutal life truths is that I'm a terrible artist. I can hardly draw a circle. And if I try and draw a circle, it looks like a potato. So the good news is that I can hire people to draw for me, but I am very skilled with language and I'm very good at writing. So I am able to sit with my clients, get their story, and then I write a design brief. And in my own podcast, which is called Shine, I have a series of design briefs that I've written for each of 10 conversations that I've had with 10 interesting people. And the process gives my artist something to draw out. And the words are pretty clear, but a lot of times the artist and I then need to sit down and have a conversation about the design. And I have a hand artist who just draws like magic. It was so fun to interview her for the job because you can either draw or you can't. It's like you can either play the piccolo or you can't. If you're auditioning for the job, can you sing or not? And I had been auditioning these people, and basically the way I did the auditions where they would sit down at the other side of this big old partner's desk I have, and I would describe a piece of jewelry and they could either draw it or not. And she was the one that sat down and didn't just draw it. I could tell that she was talking to me with her pencil strokes. And it tells me that her highest form of communication is not with her language, even though she's very intelligent and well-read. Her highest form of communication is what she draws. And if I can give the words and she can give the image, then the two of us together design some really beautiful things. And that process then goes to the industrial artist who makes it work. Just because you can say it and you can draw it doesn't mean it actually works as a piece of jewelry. And there are limits. There are limits to how you can set stones and how you can cast things and manufacturing processes and all of that. And the industrial artist is also a very sophisticated and well-trained woman. Living and working in Puerto Rico is kind of fantastic because they have some very good high vocational institutes here, similar to what I think you may find in Europe, where they will train someone to be an engineer, but an applied engineer, rather than the engineer who is going to design the tallest building that ever lived or whatever. And it's a great asset for any entrepreneur to make sure that whatever you're doing, you can get employees to help you do it. I lived and worked in Washington, D.C. for a long time doing the same thing. And what I learned about Washington is that people live there either to write rules or to follow them. But people don't live there to design jewelry. And it was very, very difficult in Washington, D.C. to find staffing. In San Juan, it's a much more creative, open, and a place that's got its enchantments. And some of those enchantments include design. And there's a reason why even today's reggaeton singers are on the top 10 all over the world. This is the land where Bad Bunny comes from, and also a lot of other important artists. So To cite your business somewhere where you know that you can have the staffing that you need is really critical, and that you can afford the staff that you want to hire. In Washington, D.C., I needed a receptionist, and I was competing with the federal government for receptionists. And as a private entrepreneur, I can't compete with them. I can't compete with the salaries. I can't compete with the benefits. And so if you were an average person that wanted a job, you would go work for the federal government. And if you didn't work for the federal government, you probably had some serious problems in your resume. And those are the people that landed at my doorstep. And very often they didn't make good employees. So as far as mindset goes, you have to be willing to lead people who want to follow you. You have to be able to hire the people that you want to work with. You have to be able to hire the people that can produce what you produce, because you can't do every skill. You can't do every job. I make beautiful jewelry, and I have very little talent as a goldsmith, but I can hire talented goldsmiths who can work for me and help get things out the door. On the flip side, my goldsmith may not be very good at getting the payroll done, but I never miss a payroll. And so that's building a team is critical. So this is a client. He's a Bitcoiner, and he was in Kansas City and met a woman from Guam. And neither one of them thought that they were going to Kansas City to fall in love, and they did. And I sat down with them and heard their story. And the piece of jewelry I designed is written in this design brief. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read it just so you get a sense of what I do. It's called The Radiance of Sunflowers, a love story. Come September, the Kansas plains erupt in gold. Not the kind held in vaults or traded in markets, but the living gold of sunflowers, legions of them, flaring skyward, their faces lit with devotion. In their brief reign, they transformed the landscape into a sunlit sea. It was here, amidst the unrelenting brilliance just beyond Kansas City, that a love story unfolded, unexpected, elemental, and profound. The two alive separately, drawn by a conference, but weighted with private sorrow. They were not seeking each other, yet something in the wind, perhaps the timing, perhaps divine choreography, brought them together. What began as a passing exchange grew roots with startling speed. It did not feel like falling. It felt like remembering. Sunflowers do not hesitate. They rise, they align. They turn their entire being toward the light, even when the sky clouds. Their very nature is one of devotion and resilience, attributes that came to define this union. This love has taken shape, not as something fragile or ornamental, but as something sturdy, inevitable, and exquisitely alive. At the heart of their engagement lies a ring that is more than adornment. It is a narrative, memory, and vow made visible. A cushion-cut diamond, colorless and radiant, commands the center, a sun in miniature. Encircling it are marquise-cut yellow diamonds, precisely staggered to evoke the fronded crown of a sunflower in full bloom. The composition is airy, almost botanical, and yet grounded in its precision. It is set in 18-karat gold, warm, unyielding, eternal. This ring will soon rest on the hand of a bride, not as a trophy, but as a seal. It speaks of the moment when her life and his were braided together by choice, by light, and by the quiet certainty that they had found home in one another. That Kansas weekend, sun-drenched and wind-swept, lives now in metal and stone. And the sunflowers will return. They always do. They will turn their faces once more, and in doing so, they will echo the vow at the center of this story, to orient always toward the light and toward one another, no matter the season. And that's an engagement ring. That ring takes me 4 months to make. I have to cut the diamonds. I have to source them. I mean, that's, that takes a long time. Not to mention the fact that I actually have to convince the client that his new wife needs to wear a sunflower on her finger, which is not a small thing, and I always start out with the art piece, and invariably, it gets dialed back and designed back, but we've got a design, and she will, I think she will like it, and I think he will like it. I hope they do, because what ultimately I want to invite for them is they're this couple that has this strange story of coming from Guam and Los Angeles and meeting in Kansas City and falling in love in a sunflower field. And if she wears a ring that speaks of that, then they're reminded of their creation story every day. And people will ask, hey, that's a neat ring. What does that mean? And again, they can speak of their creation story. And it's a chance for them every day, 30 years from now, to remind each other, the sun, follow the sun, be like that moment in a September field in Kansas, which, when you think of September fields in Kansas, I mean, who even thinks of that? And so it's really, I want them to not think that it's a weird thing that happened, but actually beautiful. And if you've ever watched sunflowers, they mind the sun. Even if it's cloudy, they know where the sun is. And these two people in that field of sunflowers seem to know where each other were before they even got there. And I'm really pleased to be able to make that for them. But the process is I meet the client and I have to learn this about them. That takes a while, and it's all of this costs a lot of money. These are expensive things. It's not jewelry that's made for someone that's saving $5,000 to get married. This is, but this is also the same person that that may buy original artwork, or they may buy, one of a kind automobiles or something like that. I enter the luxury space, and luxury is a rough space. It's a rough market, and I'm happy to talk about luxury as well. One of the things about luxury is you have very, very few clients. There are very, very few people who are actually qualified to be my clients. And when I say qualified, I'm not speaking of a personality that I like them or don't like them or whatever. I mean, you have to have the bank account to support the things you're buying. You're buying fancy colored diamonds. If you're buying an array of yellow and orange diamonds, that just to start with is very expensive, even at wholesale. You're buying my time, and my time bills out pretty high. You're buying my workshop, you're buying very expert craftsmanship. And there are very few people that have the bank account to support that. Yet those people need other people around them to know that they've bought something good, because we are egotistical people. And if you feel like you've got something special, and maybe you've just spent $100,000 on a piece of jewelry, well, you kind of want your friend to know that that happened. So you have to advertise to everyone else. And I always call this the Rolex ad in the Port Authority bus station. Now, if you've ever been to the Port Authority of New York City and the bus station, millions of people go through that terminal every week. And it's kind of gritty, it's kind of dirty, and no one wants to spend a whole lot of time there. But when you get off the bus, what do you see up above the thing is a big lit advertisement for a Rolex watch. Now, the vast majority of people that are riding the city bus to the Port Authority bus terminal from New Jersey don't have the money to buy a new Rolex watch, but their boss does. And they arrive at work and they see their boss's new Rolex watch. And what Rolex has done is they have told the boss's staff that he's bought a nice watch. And that is a big part of the advertising support that goes into luxury. is you're not actually advertising for your clients because, your luxury client will find you. You're advertising so when someone buys a ring, he or she can tell her friends to go on Instagram and they can see the other things you've done, and the other things you've done can support the fact that the very expensive piece of jewelry they bought is a good thing. The actual marketing I do for my clients is I offer them a lot of privacy. My clients are typically notable people, and I meet them in such a way that I don't share their details. I don't share their information. I don't even tell my clients about each other. If one of my clients wants to give me good word of mouth, I really appreciate that. But secrecy and privacy is a big deal for them, because very often people that have the kind of money that it takes to shop in my store are people that have been used and abused in other cases, and they need safe spaces. And I'm very proud of the safe spaces I give my clients. I also take their phone calls in the middle of the night if I need to. I entertain lots of changes at odd hours. I travel. I meet. I have a client in New York City that I like to meet at the Yale Club. I'm a member of the Yale Club, and she didn't go to Yale, so she can't be. And the Yale Club of New York City is an old and storied building, and it's kind of fun to go into. It's also a great place in New York City to meet clients, because at the Yale Club, no one really cares who else is there. And it's got a strong front door. And we have fun there. She and I have a good time talking about whatever she wants to talk about. And I give my clients my time that way. The things that I try not to give my clients are headaches. I try not to give my clients problems in package delivery. Logistical problems are not something they need. And so I also, with my clients, very rarely speak to their staff. And I personally come in at a level where I can look my clients in the eye. But I like to keep these things very personal, so that somebody's personal assistant doesn't have all the details of a new and expensive thing that someone might be designing. Price and brand maintenance in the luxury space is also critically important. If you are going to be Tiffany and Company, or my brand, the Intrepid Wendell, you operate at a very expensive level, and you want to make sure you don't cheapen the brand by selling cheap things, because people will think of your brand as the thing that fails first. And if you are Tiffany and Co., and your bespoke line is legendary, expensive, and flawless, you keep it that way. And in my brand, where my designs are extremely personalized and come, directly as monuments and metal and gemstones to a person's personal history, I keep it that way, and I don't mass produce anything, because if I ever started mass producing, it cheapens all of the jewelry that I've made that speaks directly to the client. So it's important that if I do make things that are more accessible to the average consumer, that they not be jewelry. This kind of brings me to the conversation about the house in Old San Juan that I'm putting together to be the Cathedral of Wendell. And I use the word cathedral not religiously, so apologies to any of my Orthodox or Roman friends who may have a very specific opinion about what a cathedral is, but for me, I bought a 5-story house in Old San Juan that's large. It's a large Spanish colonial building, and the building I bought in 2020 in a week because I was standing on the roof and I saw one of the most beautiful views of the oldest city in America that I had ever seen. Most people don't realize that San Juan is actually the oldest city in the United States. St. Augustine, Florida likes to claim that it is, but St. Augustine was found by Juan Ponce de Leon when he was an old man, and San Juan was founded by him when he was a young man. And San Juan dates from 1521, so it's more than 500 years old now. And the house that I purchased, the first level of it, when it was once nestled behind old city walls, comes from the 18th century. And as in many old cities, there was another story that was added in the 19th century, and then 3 more stories that were added in the 21st century. In this building, on the first floor, with very tall ceilings and Spanish colonial barrel vaulting, I plan on putting my workshop in. And I've been toying with the idea in the front of putting in a very sophisticated bakery. Maybe a panaderia, as they say here, with a baker from Spain. And in that bakery, I could make a very specific pastry that comes from my brand and my brand only. And it might be the $10 way to touch my brand for the people who can't afford the $50,000 way to touch my brand. And it's not jewelry, so it doesn't cheapen the jewelry I make, but it's a way for the crowds to come in. And, there's a business model behind running a bakery as well that's more than just making a $10 pastry that represents my brand. But on the second floor of that building, I would live, and on the third, fourth, and fifth floors of that building, I have the interest of making an artistic institute for creatives, sort of mid-career creatives. And this in my mind, is a place where someone who's 35 to 45, maybe up for tenure in a year and needs to have a paper or has a creative idea and come from anywhere in the world that's not the United States or the Caribbean. So I'm looking for people from outside. Maybe you're a Japanese block printer. Maybe you're an Irish carver. Maybe you're an Indian city planner or a Kenyan sewage treatment plant designer. Who knows? Just be a creative person. Come to Old San Juan, stay for 6 months, and there we can put some money up for a stipend for people to pay their bills. They can live in the house. And then at the end of it, they have to leave something behind. Leave something in Old San Juan that wasn't there before. And old cities, whether it's Old San Juan, Puerto Rico, or perhaps even the center of Zagreb, can get kind of stifled because they do the same thing the same way they've done it for a long time. And I think that the old city of San Juan might benefit from having some creatives come from far away. And all of that folds into my luxury package of making very high-end jewelry myself. And it's part of more than just a jewelry brand. It's part of a bakery, but it's also part of a creative institute. It's part of a cultural center. It's part of an old city that's been around for 500 years that I myself didn't make. I'm just a chapter, and there have been a lot of chapters before me, and if God wills it, there will be chapters after I'm gone. What does my chapter look like? Well, I hope it looks like a beautiful instance of luxury on Calle Cristo in Old San Juan. And all of that, luxury, when you have a luxury brand, it can't just be the one luxury thing you make. There are certainly some single makers who make very fine leather goods, or there's a jeweler in Paris who's kind of he's got his own workbench and he does a lot of the work himself. He's a very fine jeweler. But to have a luxury brand, you need more than just the one item. And the thing that I bring is an intellectualization of it. I'm approaching the creativity of jewelry from a space of psychology, from a space of anthropology, from a space of language arts, and not just from the applied technology. And so with that, there's more to it than just making a ring, when I can also have a recording space in the house, which I plan on having. And anyone from San Juan who wants to come record in my house, and it's going to be engineered for recording, can do so for free. And that's just a beautiful way of bringing more art and life, not just into the house and into the brand, but into the street. And then you start making an impact into the world. And I'm not going to live forever, but I do hope that maybe I can change a couple things on the way that might have an impact after I'm not here anymore. And there'll be a day when I don't need that house anymore. There will be a day when I don't need the brand, when I don't need the rings, and my body will be blowing away as dust. But what am I going to leave behind? And how am I going to do it as a fine jeweler? And I like to think that I can sell joy, and I can even create joy where there was not joy before. Yes, I have to pay my bills. Yes, I need to sell jewelry at a profit. Yes, I need to do all of that because in our society, that's how it works. However, all of that, I think I can fold into a product that has externalities that stand beyond just the single piece of jewelry I make. And so I also like to think that one of the things I offer my clients is the ability to know that the ring purchase he's making is supporting an industry that's making the world a little bit better. And when you buy a ring from some of my competition, I don't think you can say that. And I am always a fan of my competition. I learn very many things from my competition. More often than not, I learn what not to do than what to do. But we have to pay attention to those around us. And I try not to copy anybody because everyone else is already taken. So I do my own thing. And at the end of it, I have the great hope that the next half of my life I can fill the container. I very much enjoyed speaking today about my process, my creative industry, trying to establish myself as a luxury brand in a crowded market. Thanks for listening to me talk about my favorite city, which is the one I live in, Old San Juan. And if you or your listeners are interested in learning more, you are certainly able to go to my website, which is at theintrepidwendell.com. And I have my own podcast, if you're interested, and that podcast is called Shine, Life Perspectives from a Bespoke Jeweler. And the first season, which is finished, is a conversation with 10 interesting people from 10 different walks of life, all the way from a double gold medalist Olympian to a retired federal judge. And each of the conversations I have results in a piece of jewelry that I've designed for them. And I'm in the process of making those pieces of jewelry now. If you would like to visit me in Old San Juan, I welcome visitors anytime.
'21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.